Hi everyone, how's it going? I'm Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And welcome to Trans Joy Boise, the podcast where we celebrate the vibrant stories, resilience, and connections of Boise's trans community. Through heartfelt conversations, uplifting narratives, and shared experiences, we explore the many ways trans joy thrives despite challenges. I'm gonna make you do it.
Okay. Each episode highlights inspiring voices from local advocates and artists to everyday heroes, showcasing the beauty and strength of being trans in Boise and beyond. Together, we foster understanding, amplify voices, and create a space for joy, healing, and solidarity. That's part 2.
Ooh, sure, yeah.
No.
You say it? All right, tune in, connect, and celebrate with us. Trans joy is here, and it's unstoppable. I know.
You're better at that part.
Well, we'll figure it out. I was like,
No,
I don't want to hog up all the space. And did you introduce yourself, though?
Oh, no, I'm Pacey. I'm trans mask. I use they, he pronouns, and I'm a mental health and recovery advocate.
Whew.
Yeah, got that out of the way.
Awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
How have you been?
Stressed.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what for?
Right? It's so delightful right now.
Right?
Just everything going on. It's at first it seemed like gradual. Like every few days you would see something on your phone that was devastating. And now it's like, it feels like every time I'm looking at my phone, I'm seeing something that is horrific, anti-trans, anti-queer, whatever. And it's overwhelming. Yeah.
I've definitely seen just more trans everything on like all my socials and everything you have, whether it's more trans creators talking about stuff or more meeting new trans people all the time, or definitely, a lot of like just this bill, that bill, we're going to lose this, we're going to lose that. I even saw Laverne Cox talking about like, she was like telling people like, if you can be stealth, be stealth. If you can flee, flee. And I was just like, damn. Because I hear people say that and I understand it, but to hear Laverne Cox say it was just like a whole nother level. And I was just like thinking, oh, should I be, and I think that's something that's been ongoing for me. And it's just like, it's like this push and pull of like, how freaked out should we be? And how freaked out shouldn't we be? And like all these sorts of things. And it's just interesting. And then we have also people who are choosing to come out who've been stealth, because they've seen what's happening and they're like, no, this is not okay. Like I've been living in this safety all this time. Now I need to do something, And so it's such this interesting space that people are in. But I think it's that what? Fight, flight, is it fawn?
Fawn, yeah.
And freeze.
And freeze, yeah.
Yes, I loved that. Yes, those 4. I know fawn was a newer one, but I think we're just definitely seeing a lot of that, which just basically says there's a lot of space for fear and a lot of ways in which we're going to, I guess, respond to it.
Yeah, it's really impressive to me when people that have been living stealth are now deciding to be more public about it. We have someone that is going to be working with us who is doing that very thing. And I'm just so impressed by him.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I'll talk to some people, and I've even, researched this, where a lot of the propaganda that we're seeing, like the anti-trans propaganda, is very similar to a lot of the propaganda that was around in the 40s. And that's alarming, right? So then you talk to people that are like, well, back then in the 40s, you wonder about these people that didn't leave, why didn't they leave? And then we're in a situation that is sort of similar. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen, but it's like the way that they're talking about things is eerily reminiscent of it. And, we're still here, we're not going anywhere. So.
And in Idaho, we've been dealing with this crap they've been talking about at a national level now. We've been dealing with it already.
Yeah.
So, and yes, we're still here.
It's kind of like the boiling frogs thing, like you put frogs in hot water and they don't jump out because it's just kind of warm. And then the hotter it gets, they still don't. But then by the time they're boiling, it's too late. And I think that we have been very gradually been exposed to a lot of this anti-trans rhetoric and legislation. And now it's really starting to ramp up.
Yeah. Well, we were like for folks, you might be wondering like why we do this podcast or how we think to come up with what we do. But we literally were just talking for the podcast. We're trying to see like what makes the most sense to be talking about with y'all, not only today, but just also like in the future and how this might look too. So we really are trying to do our best to really kind of like speak to what is happening right now and hopefully helping people, because this is not this fear, this seeing the doom scrolling, that like this is something that's going to be happening over and over and over for the next few weeks. And so we're really hoping to be maybe a soft space where folks can land to either learn a little bit about this or even just be in community while you're kind of like sitting through some of this stuff, because self-care, like managing your like consumption of this stuff, spending time with friends and loved ones, all that stuff is going to become, I think, even more and more important over the next few weeks.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, everybody gets to decide how much media they're consuming and where they're consuming it. I think, I myself am on Reddit far too much. So I am inundated by a lot of horrific, I get the news almost immediately of the anti-trans stuff that's happening. And everyone's different. Some people can handle looking at that all the time, but then other people, it's just too much. And that's okay for it to be too much. Yeah. So we kind of want to be a place where you can kind of go to get some updates and news, but in a little bit of a softer fashion.
Right. Yeah. And really kind of helping to sift out the urgency of things, or I don't know, we'll have to play it by ear because we have yet to see how things are really going to, pulled, I guess, come undone, so to speak. And so, but we are doing our best to like keep our ears to the ground and talk with other folks. And we're hoping to have people on over the next few weeks who can, tell you a little bit, speak more about some of these things as well. I know one of the things we wanted to spend some time on today was, I guess, talking about maybe an unlikely collaborator, or I know it's a collaborator that is one that we say, oh, we're working with the Unitarian Universalist Church. And people are like, huh? Church? Trans people? Gender nonconforming people in church? Like those people are horrible to us. They are awful. And yes, there are many of them that are. Yeah. So why are we deciding to work with the UU?
Yeah, I think that this is a really important topic because I know that I've spoken to a lot of people in our community about like this event that we're doing and events in the past, and I'll say it's at a church, and immediately I know what the response is going to be because it was my response. Honestly, it was like, oh, gross. Why the fuck is it at church? Because a huge percentage of trans and non-binary people have religious trauma, and that doesn't necessarily have to be at a church, but it can just be from religious people.
Yep.
And I think hosting anything at a church is going to be triggering for many people. And that's why we want to talk about it today.
Yeah, we really want to talk about it in the sense that we know and understand that it's a difficult situation and difficult spot that might not be for everybody. But we also wanted to give some, like, I guess just a little bit more, like, let you know, like, see the thought and the grappling that we've gone through, even just the two of us, and in conversations with other people around, working with the UU. And I know I first started working with the Unitarian Church back when I was doing more drag work versus trans work. And I had just moved back to Idaho, and I was really looking for a church or a faith community that would be open to having drag artists come in and be a part of their service and part of what they do. Because that was something that I've gotten booked and I've done in other cities and other states, but I didn't know if that was something that would be happening here. And the Unitarian Church I had met Reverend Sarah Lawal. And at first I just saw her come to all these different things where she was at the Trans Day of Visibility event. She was speaking at this, she was speaking at that. She was coordinating things around trans everything, like I think if anybody's been in Boise for any amount of time and been looking at trans and non-binary kind of like activism or advocacy, you're going to know Reverend Sarah Lawal because she's just does so much and has been doing so much for a long time. She has a trans child, which for me was something that led me to feel a little bit more comfortable as well. Because I think there are plenty of churches and plenty of church people who might say they love us and affirm us, but are they actually going to do that? That's a whole nother question. And that's something I think that takes time to really figure out, because I think there's a lot of well-meaning people who have the best of intentions, but at the end of the day, they can be harmful to us and our community. And so, but we feel good about this. And it's not like the long-term plan.
No, I think right now for our community, a lot of these things, like maybe collaborations or places that are open to us and available to us, are going to be coming from a place of necessity for us. We are doing the café where we're helping people getting their documentation figured out, and we need a place to do that. And this place happens to be open and wanting us to go, and they want to help us do this. So for me, it's difficult because I had the quintessential AA experience, right? Like I went in, I was really vulnerable, and they convinced me that the only way you're going to get clean is with God, right? I ended up with the stereotypical AA religious tattoo, and then I was just like, this is ridiculous, because I had never been religious my entire life, and I thought that was really predatory and gross. And I've seen countless people be turned away essentially from recovery because they don't believe in God or they're uncomfortable with it. So I like to go and make sure that doesn't happen, because it really shouldn't be about a higher power at all. It should be about you. So my experience in religion really is, I was really affiliated with the Satanic Temple because I was a part of the sober faction there. So in order to facilitate my own meetings, I had to be an ordained minister in the Satanic Temple. So I did that, and I hosted weekly meetings with their sober faction, which I thought was great because it's secular, like they don't actually believe in Satan. And I felt like we helped people a lot more than other typical 12 steps. And I just it makes me so worried with church, just because of all of the negative, harmful bullshit that I've seen. So I just kind of want to help represent anyone who has similar feelings as myself. Like if you are worried about religion, if you're not religious, if you hate religion, it's still a safe place, because there are going to be other people like you. I will be there. And we're not going there for any church reason at all. And it's a non-denominational church, which helps.
This church, well, and it's a Unitarian church. And so like for people who might not be familiar with kind of the Unitarians, and I'm going to speak fairly loosely of my understanding, but like with even with this Unitarian church, they do everything. Like I went to a solstice service, which was Wiccan and done by a witch in the Unitarian church. They've done they have drum circles on a regular basis. They have fascist meetings. They have all these really cool, or not fascist meetings.
I didn't even catch it. I was just like, yeah, cool.
Freedom from fascist, I think. Groups. Don't say it. Huh?
I just assumed that you meant anti-fascist groups.
Anti-fascist, totally, yeah.
I love it.
Yes, they do not have fascist groups. They have anti-fascist groups. And the Unitarians themselves, they do have kind of like a creed, like any other church would, as far as like what they believe and don't believe. But they're not necessarily a Bible church. They're not and a lot of times they'll actually have different faiths and different communities represented, or even that like host the service, or they'll have side services. And one of the things that the Unitarian has been big on is actually comprehensive sex education. And so they've provided comprehensive sex education from pre-K to teens for decades.
Wow.
And it's not just like a abstinence-based only kind of crap. Like it's actual, like they go through the comprehensive sex ed. So they talk about sexuality, they talk about gender, and it's all in a way that's affirming, spiritually affirming, as well as, everything else. And they've been doing this for a really long time. And so I think there's all these little boxes that kind of click, that is like, if we're gonna work with any of them, like this is the group to work with. Because there's because of the pastor, what she stands for and the work that she's done. I mean, you can just look and see what happens within there and see that it's stuff that is affirming to us as individuals, regardless of how you feel about like the religious stuff, which I understand and I get like wholeheartedly. There's not like crosses everywhere. There's not religious iconography. Like it's obviously a church, and it looks like a church in the sense that a church looks like a church, minus the iconography. But it's, I don't know. So I want people to understand that, like, I want to be like, it's not like that church, but it is still a church, you know? And so it's totally reasonable to have the fears, to have the anxieties, to even be like, I'm not going to do it. And one of the things that we're hoping to do is to be able to not have these things happen just here, but also being able to help connect people to the same services or the same people outside of this particular moment on this particular Saturday once a month. And eventually maybe we'll be able to do it at a different location that might feel a little bit more comfortable for more people. But, you know, it is a safe space. They have a lot of space. They're not charging us. They're going to help with like food and like all these sorts of things. And so I think in a lot of ways with where we're at, it makes a lot of sense that there's somebody that we would collaborate with. And I personally have worked with them a lot for like a couple of years now. So personally, I do vouch for it. But it is a church and it's full of people. And people hurt people regardless of where you're at. And so there's obviously some sense of bravery that it's going to take to come into the space. Exactly. But I would really encourage folks to lean into that if they're able.
Me too. I really hope that people will still go. I think it's going to be really beneficial for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's going to be nice to get help with like name changes, gender marker changes, all of those things, but also just to be amongst like-minded people that are going through the same thing and having similar experiences. I think there's so much value in that, and regardless of where that takes place. And I know that it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I really hope that you can push past that. And if you're uncomfortable, if you do go and you're uncomfortable for any reason, like you can pull me aside and talk to me about it, because I have a lot of experience with that kind of thing just in recovery. You know, I would almost exclusively work with people in recovery that had religious trauma because I would just be like, please don't leave. Like, don't leave because of this. Like, I can offer you other options. And it's
you need to recover. Don't let this God shit or religious shit get in the way of what you need for yourself to be okay. And that's kind of what I would challenge in this particular situation. Don't let religion or the perception of religion or God or whatever keep you from getting what you need. And that might be being with community, getting help with your paperwork, whatever brings you there. That, you know, don't let that rob that from you, because at the end of the day, then they win.
It's interesting now because we're so under fire that we're starting to see unlikely allies. And I think that's really cool.
Well, and you can look, like the Unitarian Church in particular has been involved with social justice movements, like I think probably since their inception, you know, and if you look at a lot of history, like even with Martin Luther King, and you look at a lot of the movements over the decades, church was involved. Often church was the oppressor, but it was also the liberator, or a channel for the liberation, right? And so I think part of that is just figuring out, because the church is powerful, is figuring out how can we tap into that power in order to really meet the times that we're in right now. You know,
I'm glad that you mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. because it's his birthday today, and he's one of my heroes. I love him so much. But you're absolutely right. I didn't really think about that.
I mean, Maya Angelou, you know, there's Frederick Douglass, you know, there's a lot of really great people who have spent time in churches and with church people working toward the liberation of all people, you know, and I don't see why. And religion has been harmful to them as well. You know what I mean? Like around, you know, there was religion was used to like say that slavery was okay. You know, religion has been used to, you know, oppress gay people and trans people and, you know,
women.
Oh my
God, it's fucking terrible.
So, but I think it also has had I think because it's but it's so hard because it's
Yeah.
like feeling like you're becoming friends with the oppressor,
Oh, totally.
which
Yeah.
is, it's not easy.
And I felt, I mean, when I met Sarah, I mean, she's really nice, lovely person. But when I initially met her, I was like, why are we meeting?
Why are we
someone
meeting with a
that's
pastor?
with a pastor? Yeah, genuinely, because I was
Yeah.
like, why? Like, why is she here? And I feel like in most instances, like I would stand by that, but with her, I think it's different. And I think right now, just because things are shifting and things are changing so quickly, and we're so under attack, that we're going to be needing to accept help and support where we can get it.
Yeah.
You know, when it's coming from someone who genuinely wants to help and they're being authentically kind.
And there's going to be times when like she's not actually even going to be there. Like she's really just given us the space to take over and use as we see fit. So
yeah,
it's not about even like, you know, it's not about them getting gold stars or, you know, whatever you get for doing good shit these days.
Exactly.
But like she's just like, oh yeah, I have a space. Like I mean, they already did the paperwork party there, and a lot of people turned out, and it was great. And so this is really just kind of like a supersize me, if you will, and something that's hopefully and it's something that's a little bit more trans and non-binary led, I guess, even though she works very closely with trans and non-binary people, and they have been they were part of the process too. So I don't want to say that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's really just about expanding it and building from it versus starting completely over from something new.
Well, I think that you're right. I mean, we've talked about it before where there are a lot of people right now that are interested in kind of capitalizing on how controversial like trans and non-binary people are. And this is not that. Like when I met Sarah, she's really a cool person. And I would have totally missed out on that if I would have just been like, you're a pastor, you know, but
she would be like, yeah, I know.
yeah, but it's still, So I think that it's going to be an interesting intersection of, I don't know, people, I guess. It's the biggest takeaway I want people to get from this episode is that it might be uncomfortable, but try and push through it, because it's, you know, it's going to be beneficial.
Yeah. And tell us about it. Like, tell us about it. And if you have solution or ideas, like, let us know as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, and like, just envision kind of a little bit about what it would look like is that trans and non-binary people will greet you as you get there, take you into the space for coffee and snacks. And that could be all that you do. Hang out in a little cafe, eat coffees and snacks, and just chit chat with folks.
Yeah.
But there will also be these other opportunities where you could go off into another side room or whatever and meet with a lawyer or meet with a clerk of the court or meet with another trans or non-binary person who's went through the process of getting documentation. They're also, you know, we're hoping to have like the Boise Trans Collective and Trans Homing Project and any other organizations that provide services to trans and non-binary people. We would love to invite you to be there with us so that we can let folks know about you and vice versa. So this really is going to be hopefully a safe space and probably maybe one of the very few places that is really for trans and non-binary people across the age spectrum as well. It's not like a 21 and over scene. It's, you know, accessible. So if you know, use a wheelchair or have challenges in other ways, it's accessible in that way too. And I think folks might have a hard time getting there, but that might be something we can figure out on how we can help people get to the actual event. If travel is an issue and you want to go, reach out to us. See what we can do to try to make that happen. Is there anything else we wanted to try to touch bases on in this conversation? I know we just felt like it was important to, I guess, put it out there, you know, that because we know that this is probably the things that people are thinking.
Yeah, and I don't want people to think that Trans Joy Boise is religious in any way, shape, or form. Because no, absolutely not. And I just worried that people would kind of equate like, oh, they're doing this in a church, like maybe
Yeah.
they're trying to talk about
we've
God.
done
It's
some-
like, fucking no way.
Yeah, we've done some, and I know part of that might be my issue. I know I'm a chaplain, so I'm kind of do a lot of spiritual shit. So I know that can be confusing.
Yeah, but spiritual is
myself-
not religious.
I agree, but for some people it's not.
Yeah.
The nuance isn't clear.
Yeah.
I get that. I get that wholeheartedly. Like that's partially why I've become a chaplain, is to be with other trans and non-binary and queer folks and help them deal with that religious trauma.
Yeah.
You know, and help them get what they need to get their life, you know, and to live a life worth living, you know. And sometimes we have to heal from some of that shit. And sometimes that is finding a different spiritual understanding or just completely getting away. But like there's a harm there. It creates shame in us. It creates behavioral, you know, there's just so many, like I know a lot of my addiction and a lot of my challenges with addiction and being in violent situations and circumstances were all really based in the initial shame in being a queer person.
Yeah.
And the belief that God no longer loved me or somehow I lost my soul, which is all bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's still not something like, like, I don't know, that's a lot to go into this conversation because the cafe has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But I think we just wanted to make sure people understood, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me, that I don't know. I just want my people to be taken care of.
Yeah.
My people, not my people, but my community,
Yeah.
the people that I get
No,
to
I get it.
call friends or be in community with. And like, I want to look out for us just like I want people looking out for me, you know, and I would never intentionally invite somebody into a space to be harmed.
Right.
And yet I know I can't promise that you're not going to, you know, that it's not going to be a good place for you.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to determine for yourself. And if it is a space issue, please still reach out to us and we'll find ways to meet with you one-on-one or however way we need to get you connected and get you the support that you need.
Exactly.
So hang with us.
Yeah. And if anyone is struggling with their recovery, reach out. I mean, that is something that I genuinely enjoy helping people with. I've done it for 16 years. So, you know, I would love to help if there's any way that I can. I know that it's going to be difficult for people in recovery from anything really in the next 4 years because it's going to be so stressful. Like you're just barraged by all of this horrible news and all of these things, these terrible realities, your rights being taken away. And of course, you naturally are just like, well, what can I do to kind of numb this?
To soften the blow.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and hopefully that's something that Trans Joy Boise can do is help soften the blow of life and the things that are coming at us because it is hard and it's real. And that's not to mean I don't know. Because some people you're going to use substances and you're going to and that's going to be okay for you.
Yeah,
but
totally.
For some of us, we can't. And so if that's you, also know that there's hope and there's, you know, a soft place to land as well. Yeah.
And use fentanyl testing strips, please.
Yes. Wow. How did this conversation feel?
Good. I think it'll clear it up. I just had a lot of anxiety about, you know, people thinking that we were trying to sell really or like trick them into being like, hey, let us help you with something really important. And as soon as they were there, just like, let's talk about Jesus. It's like,
no, that's not in it at all. And so, and I think that's the biggest thing was just having transparency.
Yeah.
And working towards something that hopefully will be better for more.
Yeah.
But I think I was having a conversation with another advocate the other day and they were like planning this like in a year and this in like 18 months and this, and I'm like, but what about fucking now?
Yeah.
Like we can't wait a year or 18 months. I mean, that's cool for the long game.
Yeah.
But like, what are we doing right now? And what can we do right now? Like to me, that's what's important to me. I'm happy that all that shit is happening for the long game, but I feel like we're really at a point we've got to be thinking about how can we help and be with one another right now.
And it almost feels impossible to be planning something that far out just because of how
we don't know
things are right now.
But and there's still like probably going to be a need for trans and non-binary
Mhm.
folks to have some sort of support.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's probably trans and non-binary led.
Yeah.
No matter how things play out, whether,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I know, but it's like, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just stressful.
Mm.
You know, it's an interesting time to live through. I feel like I've said that several times for the last
On this
decade,
podcast,
really.
or just
Yeah, right. No, it's just, you know, like the pandemic, like, oh, what an interesting time to live through. Or even in 2016 when Trump was elected the first time, wow, what an interesting time to live through. It's like it just keeps fucking happening and getting worse. And I'm just like, I heard there's this Twitter thread that I'll have to link it somewhere because it kind of cracks me up, but it scares me. Remember it when the world was supposed to end in 2012?
Oh yeah,
It was like
that called?
like the Mayan calendar or something.
Yeah, what was that called? Y2K, right? No, was that
No,
before?
that was 2000.
Oh, I don't know.
No, in 2012 it was like the Aztec or Mayan calendar. I don't remember which
but
one.
Y2K was a thing
that
too.
also happened.
Gosh.
Yeah, that was
I'm not completely
objectively
stupid.
larger thing. But they
Okay.
thought that the world was supposed to end in 2012, and it was like this huge thing, right?
Mhm.
And this guy goes into it thinking that, and he's speculating, but he backs it up with like credible citations,
Mhm.
that the world sort of did end in 2012, and now this is like an alternate reality. And he goes through all of these absolutely bizarro things that have happened since then. And at first you're reading it and you're like, okay, this guy's fucking crazy. But by the end of it, you're just kind of like,
maybe
did it?
That's how that
Did
works.
it end?
That's how conspiracy works.
Yeah. And I'm just perpetuating it because
No.
I found it. I'm gonna find it and link it because like it's really interesting.
I mean, so much is about perspective and
Yeah.
point of view. I mean, like a lot of people feel like we're in war already with like social media and like media wars and all this sort of stuff. There's like maybe we aren't like shooting people with guns, and which is happening too, but there's still like these wars, these I mean, even thinking about this with trans rights and non-binary rights and whatever, in some ways this is kind of a war, and they are taking us out. They are taking us out. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're rambling now.
Yeah,
it's feeling like that's the end. Do you want to say goodbye?
Sure. Thank you all for being here with us this week, and I hope that you are at least thinking about going to the cafe, and we will see you next week.
Yes, stay close to your loved ones. Bye-bye.